been a while since I visited issues to do with gender, men and women, discrimination, etc. But I came across a piece in The Guardian which no doubt will ignite a lot of debate and has indeed ignited a lot of debate in Australia. I'm going to read it out in a second, it's not excessively long. Just a disclaimer, The Guardian is not my paper of choice usually, but I got it because it had good coverage on Lebanon and had obituary on Maggie Smith. Anyway, I'll just read out the piece, then offer my thoughts as I always do. The report's by Kelly Burke. Tasmania's Museum of Old and New Art, Mona, yesterday won an appeal in the state Supreme Court in its bid to continue barring men from an installation called the Ladies' Lounge. The exhibit was closed in April after Tasmania's Civil and Administrative Tribunal ordered the museum to admit men to the female-only space, upholding a Sydney man's complaint that the museum had discriminated against him on the basis of gender. But yesterday the Supreme Court found the Ladies' Lounge qualified for an exemption from the state's Anti-Discrimination Act under a section that allows discrimination if the intention behind the action is to promote equal opportunity for a group of people who are disadvantaged who have a special need. Well, women are half the population, so that's an interesting way to frame it. The Ladies' Lounge can be seen as an arrangement to promote equal opportunity by highlighting the lack of equal opportunity which generally prevails in society by providing women with a rare glimpse of what it is like to be advantaged rather than disadvantaged by the refusal of entry to the Ladies' Lounge by men. Acting Justice Shane Marshall said in yesterday's decision. That's a male judge presiding over this. The tribunal had made several errors of fact and law, including the mischaracterization of what the Ladies' Lounge was designed to promote, the judge said when quashing the 9th of April decision. A museum spokesperson said Mona would not be reopening the Ladies' Lounge until it received further instruction from the tribunal. The artist behind the installation, Kersha Keichel, that's Kaechele, described yesterday's action as a day of triumph for women in the museum. The patriarchy has been smashed and the verdict demonstrates a simple truth. Women are better than men, she said outside the Supreme Court. In a written statement, Keichel said she was grateful to the men who brought us on this journey, including Jason Lau, who lodged a complaint of discrimination in the tribunal because the widely reported case had invited people all over the world to think about the experiences of women and the social structures we inhabit. Okay, so that's the situation. This initially was ordered to shut down. Now it's reopened again. Looking at social media comments on this, it seems to have a lot of support. That is, the exhibit has a lot of support, mostly from women, but some men too are voicing support. Now, I'm not sure what the legal situation is in Australia regarding traditional gentlemen's clubs. I'm sure Melbourne and Sydney and Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Canberra have gentlemen's clubs. I know in Britain there has been some legal changes regarding the admittance of women, and two of our former prime ministers, David Cameron and Boris Johnson, took positions on this. Cameron supposedly resigned from one club if they didn't allow women. And traditionally, that's true. Gentlemen's clubs were prohibitive to women. I suspect that line about men being better than women is meant in jest. There seems to be a comedic element to this group because they've sort of dressed in, just from the way, like the sort of performance art and so on, they seem to be a bit exhibitionist. That's my impression. I looked at a couple of like videos of what they seem to be about. Um, Here's my take on it. If Australia has gentlemen's clubs that don't allow women, then okay, you could say fair enough. This is a women's only club that doesn't allow men. But I have a problem with the Western feminist argument, and I'm including Australia here in the West. Of women being downtrodden. Um, I know that in the UK there is no laws that actually discriminate against women. So this thing about equal opportunity is at best grossly exaggerated. We hear, for example, all the time about the gender pay gap, but in the vast majority of jobs, men and women are paid the same. That's referring more to CEO type positions. And actually, in some areas, the top earners are women. I would say in education in this country, women occupy some of the top spots. Um, and as always, feminists ignore areas that disproportionately affect men. In a time of war, Men are uniquely expected to fight and die for the country. And yes, there are courageous women who do that as well, but it's a fact that throughout history, it's men who've been expected to fight and die. Just ask the men of Ukraine. And this is not to disparage courageous Ukrainian women who've also made sacrifices, but Zelensky's presidential order was uniquely aimed at men. And that's just a typical example of warfare throughout history. I'm not I'm not saying that Zelensky was wrong to make that. It was a time of war, but I'm just making the point that this so-called male privilege that feminists turn out, I think it's actually hateful narrative. I think it does incite hatred against men, or at least resentment against men. Hatred might be a strong word, but I think it does breed this sort of resentment. Like men have it all, and we women are downtrodden. There are areas that women struggle. I acknowledge that, but I'm sick and tired of this feminist narrative that women are all downtrodden and men have it all on a plate. It's simply false. It's simply false. I could point to the higher male suicide rate. And yes, that's one's often used, but it's valid. It's a valid point. Um, and this is kind of their defense here is kind of dressed up as humor. Women are better than men. But imagine a men's group saying that, right? They would be immediately denounced as misogynistic. There are glaring double standards in how feminist groups go through legal cases and how men's rights activists would be treated in the same way. Um, I mean, I've always called out misogyny, and I will always call out misogyny, but I'm sick and tired of misandry getting a free pass, and it does. It unquestionably does. Um, it's just a question of double standards. So, like I say, if there is a situation in Australia where gentlemen's clubs can refuse women's admittance, I don't know what the legal situation is there, then fair enough, this can operate. But what I'm questioning is the double standards of how it's perceived. Um, and the fact it's all dressed up as humour. And oh, it's a wonderful day because they've overturned this decision. But I would say, well, it seems like a triumph for misandry, really. Is that something to celebrate in the year 2024? I'm suspicious of anyone who wants to be divisive, and I think I would definitely question Keichel's motivations. I mean, what's she trying to do? It seems like she's trying to drive this wedge between men and women, and masking it up as humour. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but that's my perception. And I have no doubt some very smug feminists will come to this video and say I'm an insecure man and all the rest of it. I've heard that crap before. Well, I'm a guy who speaks out against misogyny, but I am also speaking out against double standards. And I'm sick of the hypocrisy. And I'm not the only one. So let me know your thoughts if you live in Tasmania, if you're a man or a woman. Maybe I'm misguided. Maybe there's more to this that I'm not understanding, in which case, put me in my place. But I do think there's double standards more broadly about modern Western feminism, unquestionably.